Usually when you leave what you're doing and career-wise, it's because you got fired or because you quit, somebody made you upset, or you're going on to a better option. When you're handing over the business that you built, it's the weirdest feeling in the world. It's like having open heart surgery while you're awake. You can see them just pulling all these things out, and you don't know, you have to trust that they know what they're doing, right? That's why you brought them in. But you're also like, wait, we did this for this reason, and it's really important, but you can't do that either, because then you disempower the people you brought in. So It's this very unique phase where, I try to take it as a student. It may not feel right today, but it's gonna feel right in 6 months. I know it is, or in 3 months, or in a week when I see, I can't tell you how many times I've been like, oh, it's a bad idea, but I'm not going to say anything. And then like a week later, I'm like, wow, that was a really good idea. So I would say it's humbling, and it's a time where, I'm trying to take it in as a student, and it's very mixed. You know what I mean? But I do get to spend a lot more time with my kids, which is amazing.
Yo, this is the Streetwise podcast, where we help you level up your game, level up your leadership, and level up your life. I'm your host, Matthew McReynolds. I'm a multi-brand franchisee, and I'm a franchise consultant, which means I help people find, launch, and build their ideal franchise business. My main goal is to help you get off of zero and become the person that your dreams need you to be. Buckle up, get your popcorn ready, let's go.
Hey buddy, let's go put on a show for you so you don't come in here real quick. So sorry about that, Matt. What do you want to watch, Leighton? How about Scooby-Doo? Go talk to Mom. Here, Mom will do it for you. Go.
So how many kids you got? How old are they?
Joys being a parent.
Amen.
I've got 3 boys. I've got a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a almost 5-month-old.
A 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an almost 5-month-old? Did I hear that right?
Yeah. Turns 5 months on the 14th.
Cool. So we're in the same boat, my man. I got a 3-year-old boy, a 6-year-old boy, and a just turned 2-year-old little girl.
Oh man! So the third and second were right, or second and third are right next to each other, huh?
Yeah, second and third are right next to each other. So yeah, we got 6, 3, and just turned 2. So yeah, we got. Trust me, man. I understand everything you got going on with the joys and the craziness of that age.
Yeah, 100%. It's a fun time. No, I in all honesty, this last few call it month, I've been blessed to be able to spend most of my time, just in franchise sales. I kind of replaced myself on the operational side, and I've had a lot more time with my kids. So I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
I love that, because I was going to quickly ask a follow-up. Did anything specifically have to change, or what was it that sparked the change to where in this season of life you feel like you've been able to spend a little bit more time with the young ones?
Well, I'm a big believer that most companies create artificial ceilings depending on who they put in charge. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so if you're a founder, if you're a, first-time CEO, you started a business, or you're the CEO of a small business, there's a good chance you're not the right person to take it to that next level, Yeah. Actually, me and my partner, Greg, we've always had this agreement together. He was the CEO, I was the president. This agreement that we were not going to hold back the company, right? So we're not going to get to a point where our own level of experience or level of performance or abilities are gonna stop the company from growing. So when it was that time, we would replace ourselves. We actually, funny enough, interviewed every year since we joined. We've interviewed our own respective positions. So we've interviewed for a president, interviewed for a CEO every single year.
Wow. Oh man. So that gets me thinking about a whole line and trail of thought. But before we get too far down the path, how about we take this moment, introduce yourself, tell the people what your role is, and then how that affects your day-to-day.
Yeah. So my name is Chris Pena. Role at BODY20. I like to say my role is the chief cook and bottle washer.
Let's go.
Everything at BODY20, like any good business owner should, since day one. I candidly call myself the step founder. I think it's it's a good name.
I like
I
that
call
for
it.
you.
Me and my partner Greg do. We say it all the time.
Yeah. I like that for you.
We didn't technically come up with the original idea for BODY20. However, everything you see today was built as if a founder built it. So new brand, new equipment, new technology, new systems, new tools, new operations, new training, new sales process. Everything was built from scratch. So although we didn't have that kind of initial idea to start the company, we had to basically gut the whole company. You've ever heard that term, and we'll get into this later, but you've ever heard that term, I had to build a plane as one plane was crashing? We had to build a plane while one plane was crashing and it was on fire. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And there
Okay.
was no water
Yeah.
landing at the bottom. So we candidly call ourselves the Step Founders jokingly. Actually, funny story, I own the domain, thestepfounder.com. I'll do something with it one day.
That's a good, I see a book, a bestseller in your future, maybe.
Be nice. That'd be nice. I'm not quite the writer. That's Greg's
Okay.
department.
Yeah, get you a ghostwriter. We'll get Greg on this. All right, cool, 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 cool. So, all right, again, so interested, could break this down at so many different levels. But again, the company, since you step founded it to where it is today, has probably seen some significant changes. And I, like anybody who listens, maybe has caught on to the way that I conduct these interviews. I like to work backwards and then start working forwards again. So what does that actually mean? Like, you wake up in the morning, what is it that you actually do? Who are you in charge of? What does your team look like outside of your partner, Greg?
So I would say today I spend most of my time either helping our franchisees who want to exit the system. Some franchisees who built up their business, they want to move on. I've spent time on special projects. We're working on an acquisition right now that I won't get too much into today, just because there's still a chance it doesn't go through, but would be
Sure.
a huge benefit for our franchisees, help us grow internationally. I spend time in working with really just special projects today. So it's advising, working with the CEO who we brought on, who's incredible, a huge background. We'll talk about him a little later as well. The executive team and anything they need. I'm kind of like the historian in the company, right? So because I've been here since day one, I know everything that's ever happened, why it's happened. One of my gifts in life is I have a pretty photographic memory. I can remember almost anything down to the conversation we had on that day. I'm also a geek about taking notes. So if you look at my OneNote on Microsoft, it's quite literally tens of thousands of pages. It's insane. But so when our new CMO says, why did you guys do this? Right? It's really important she knows why, so she doesn't make the same mistakes over and over again that we've already made in the past, because she's only been here since, let's call it, January. We want to make sure that she's not relearning the hard lessons we've already learned. One thing that we found about BODY20 is we're in this unique position where we're fitness, right? But we're kind of innovative fitness that nobody's ever heard of, right? And beyond just being fitness, we're also one-on-one training, not group, which is the most common model. So there's a lot of things that work for group that work for box gyms that don't work for us. And we've had to kind of recreate a lot of the systems, a lot of that location to make it work at such a high level.
So, perfect opportunity for me to ask this. What is BODY20? Can you explain that to me and to somebody who's unfamiliar with the business and what you guys are doing in the fitness space?
Yeah. So BODY20, very simply put, we use two pieces of technology to train you, right? We're a personal training facility. So we only work one-on-one. And the first piece of technology we use is called an EMS device, or EMS, electromuscular stimulation device. It's a medical device, and essentially we send the same signal your brain sends to your muscles to tell it to move, right? So when you go to pick something up, I don't know if you've ever done this. I go to pick up this phone, right? My brain generally knows how heavy that phone is, okay? And so when I go to pick it up, it sends enough action potentials, what the signal's called, to the muscles in my arm to reach forward, pick it up, and go like this. And if you've ever picked something up that's heavier than it looks, and you kind of go to pick it up and you almost have to do it twice to pick it up, it's because your brain didn't send the right amount of action potential to pick up something that heavy, right?
Interesting.
Now, all we do is we send the exact same signal from an electrode that's on top of the muscle. So we put you in a suit, we send the signal, and we make your muscle contract. So imagine you went down to do a squat and your body said, I'm not getting back up. And I'm going to use every ounce of force I have to stay in this squat position. And you have to fight it as hard as you can with the contradicting muscles to stand up, right? So I do a curl and my bicep is isometrically holding here, and I have to fight it with my tricep to get out. And I think you tried the workout, so you understand what it feels like, right?
I do, yeah. Very recently, a few weeks ago, and I know exactly that feeling. I went in there super cocky, man. I was overconfident. I'm a fitness guy. So I told, I had him turn up the suit, probably a little higher than I should have. And he had me do a basic bicep curl, and I could not move my arm until we turned it down a little bit. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, and we call it EMS face. It's my favorite thing in the world when somebody tries it for the first time. So I tell my franchisees this all the time. I'm a big believer that fitness is built through organic community marketing, right? As a matter of fact, I
Okay.
tell franchisees all the time that when your business is mature, in most businesses, it's based on revenue or a certain amount of time over profitability or all these different things where you can kind of let your business say it's safe. In fitness, it's very different. In fitness, it's whenever the fitness community accepts you, right? So whenever my
Ooh.
members support my business and want it to be here, and the general fitness community feels the same way, what it does is it creates a world where they feed my business, right? All of my best franchisees are not growing based on digital, based on all these things. Sure, they use it, but they're growing based on referrals. My friend told me to come here because it was great for them, right? And so that being said, the best way to generate that type of kind of, interest in your market is in the community, right? To get that love from your market is to show it to that community, show up and say, I'm a part of this, right? Now, that being said, getting back to EMS face, my favorite thing in the world to do is we created this kind of like outdoor marketing kit where it's a tent with a full back wall and 2 half side walls. And then we make it feel like a studio inside, right? So it's
Okay.
got all the branding. We put music on. We have a little table. You come in. We put pads down. You try a workout. We only try your arms though. And inevitably, every time we go to any event, there's nobody coming up to our tent because nobody's going to walk up to you for no reason, right? You got to go out and get it. And so when I teach franchisees, or when I used to, I should say, it's one of my favorite parts. I've been able to do it in a long time. But I would literally pick the biggest guy that's walking by, like the most jacked, buff bodybuilder guy, and I would literally go just poke fun at him until he's willing to try it. And when he goes to try it, I would crank it up to the point where the guy's like shaking and he's like, and he's like as hard as he can. And next thing you know, there's 30 people standing around saying, what is that? How do I do? And then you get them to try it. Then you send out the team to go talk to them. And so, it's always my favorite thing when you see that first initial look of this is crap. I don't believe in this. And then they put it on and they're like, whoa, what just happened? Why can't I do a curl? There's nothing in my hands.
Tell you what, man, I am a true advocate for the concept now after having done it. I understood it, being an athlete and very basic level of understanding of EMS type of training. So the concept made sense, but I never experienced it before outside of, putting on a stim machine for an injury. And it was just something that I experienced. I've never experienced anything like that before. I was so incredibly sore for the next 2 to 3 days. I'm curious, and I got to stay on track, man, because I'm so interested about the concept just as much as I am from a business opportunity. And so we only got a limited bit of time, but the future of fitness, and you think athletes, you think people as they age and their bodies begin to change. The franchisee in my market, Nancy Miller, talks about bone density as we age all the time. And I love that she hits on that because the people in the room, it makes them think, oh, wow, I am a little older. My body doesn't work as well as I'm used to. Where do you see BODY20 kind of fitting into fitness as a whole, kind of as people get more educated and are trying to increase their functionality as they get older?
Sure. I think like all great modalities, there's going to be different use cases, right?
Okay.
So I'll talk kind of, I think, first to where the use cases are going to be in the space, and then I'll talk to where I think BODY20's use case is. We're not going to be the only EMS concept in the country. There's hundreds of brands in Europe, and Europe is significantly smaller of a fitness market than we are. So there should theoretically be a significant amount of brands. Now, the difference there is those brands are typically 2 or 3 owned by mom and pop, right? They don't have a lot of franchising there compared to the US. Here, we'll probably have, call it 4 to 5 really solid brands in the future. From day one, we positioned ourselves for 2 things. We looked at this and we said it's one-on-one training and it uses a very expensive medical device. It's never going to be a cheap product, and we don't want to have to compete on price. So we invested up front in the user experience, in the brand, and positioning ourselves to where ideally, when you go to BODY20 and then you go to a competitor, you look at it and say, well, they're kind of like BODY20, right? Not they're both EMS, but they're obviously kind of trying to copy BODY20, right?
Sure.
So that comes from brand and also positioning. We didn't do any PR until we had 200 units. So what we did is when we launched our first press release, right, into a very large PR firm, launched our first press release, it was BODY20 awards the 200th unit. So now if you are a responsible reporter and you're doing any research on EMS and you see what BODY20 is, and you're talking about this local brand, you almost can't not reach out for a comment from us. You almost can't not reach out to talk to us first, because we did that. I stole that from Cycle Bar, by the way.
Nice.
A really great thing they did. They waited until they were at 100 units. We waited until 200. But it also puts us in a position where, by the time we started having copycats, because we did, once we started announcing stuff, we started having copycats. It's going to take them so long to catch up, right? So number one, we want to make sure that we are viewed as the premier and the original offering in the space, right? Number two, we go after a very affluent clientele intentionally. If you go after somebody, our average client's over 40, right? Our memberships are really high compared to the average fitness concept. They're about double the cost of the average fitness concept in the United States. Now, why do we do that? Two reasons. Number one, it's more recession proof. Having somebody who is an affluent customer, not somebody who's upper middle class, but who's truly affluent, means they're probably not going to change their lifestyle if there's an economic issue, right? So for instance, my wife, she's got like 5 gym memberships. She's still going to drive her Escalade. She's still going to go to the gym. She's going to do all that stuff no matter what happens, because we've set ourselves up a little differently, and are a little bit more affluent. And we want to go after customers like that. Typically that leads to an older customer, which is why our average customer is over 40. But they're also more, I think, it creates a world where our franchisees have lower downside risk, right? So when you think about your business, most people tend to really lean onto like the optimistic upside of the business. I can make $1 million a year, and I can sell this for $5 million one day, and I can build this to 100 units. Cool, but there you go. But what about if it doesn't work? How hard is it to just get to a point where you're not losing money, right? And at BODY20, because of the higher revenue per customer and the smaller space that we need compared to most fitness facilities, we can go into 800, 900, 1,000 square feet, right? We can generate the same revenue as a business that has 2,000 square feet, 2,500 square feet, by the way, because with less numbers, because we charge more. So for my studios, their break-even number is so low that, it almost creates a world where if they're not hitting that, it's a pretty easy conversation. Come on, you can't get that many members. You can walk outside and talk to people and get that many members, right? And so it creates a world where we can do that. Again, this is, that's kind of factoring why we went with that more affluent client. It tends to lead to an older client. I do also think that the use case is best for an older client. Our best customer is a 55-plus-year-old male. And why? Because if I'm a very affluent, successful 55-year-old male, there's a good chance I'm in shape. There's a good chance I've stayed in shape my whole life. And there's also a good chance that I've hurt myself a lot doing that, right? Typically, the more affluent you are, the better in shape you are. You take care of yourself better because you have more time, more options to do it, right? And you can afford to do it. And so, if I've got one of my franchisees, his name was Mike. He was, I think, 54. He was super wealthy, had crushed it his whole life. He still had a 12-pack at 54 years old. But he went to a chiropractor once a week. He got shots because his back was so messed up, but he would not give up working out because that was his path. Like, he loved working out. He loved being in shape. And the only way he knew how to do it was lift weights. When he tried BODY20, he got the same feeling, the same results, the same soreness. So he knew that he was building muscle and he wanted to be a franchisee. And when he tells his story, this rough, tough Texan, 55-year-old, got the neck that's like, it's so hard that a rattlesnake couldn't pierce it. You know what I'm saying? Oh, yeah. That guy in Texas. And he would literally tear up because he didn't have to go to chiropractic anymore. He didn't have to go, get these shots to be able to do the thing that he loved. And he got to stay in shape and feel good about himself once a week with BODY20.
Wow. I could totally see that because it's so low impact. That was something that I really appreciated. I'm a runner. I run a lot, and I try not to do heavy back squats anymore because I've had some back issues at 34, and I'm trying to be able to still have the 12-pack at 54, even though I don't have one now. But no, I see that working for people that have had injuries, that have kind of struggled to kind of build consistency because it is such a short time span. I'm curious, do you see it as a negative that you guys have to educate your potential clients before they're willing to come in and try it out? Because I feel like people are so, for lack of a better word, ignorant about the concept and what it truly is that you almost have to, your franchisees have to educate people first and then get them to come in. And does that create a slower sales cycle? Like, what goes on in your brain when you think through those sorts of things?
So I think, skepticism is real in what we do, right? People do not necessarily believe it. I think we luckily have a very unique advantage at BODY20 where we can take that device into the market, right? I can pack that up into a small suitcase and I can take it anywhere. And that's really what we preach at BODY20. When we have a franchisee come on, before they actually sign their agreement at Discovery Day, I always have the same line of conversation with them because I want people to have good expectations, right? And I think that in franchising specifically, Matt, there is the most important thing is the franchisor-franchisee relationship, okay? And so
come on.
that being said, that starts with good and bad expectations. If I tell you you're going to make $1 million in year one, you make $975, I'm like, where is my 25 grand? You're going to be upset. If I tell you you're going to lose money, you make a penny, you're like, I beat what everybody said I was going to do. I feel really good about myself, and you guys helped me get there, and I feel excited, right? And so we try to have really good expectations up front. One of those is the amount of work it's going to take to actually get this done, right? And that's not work that maybe you're doing as an owner. It might be the operator you hire or the manager, right? That's going out and doing the actual work, or your team in the studio, but it takes the effort. And so what we tell people is we always use the same line kind of going through what it's like to own an EMS studio in the US today. So if you went and you were going to open a spinning studio, right? Like a mountain bike cycle bar, right? Whatever the case is. And what would you do? You'd go into market and you'd say, we're yellow and we have rock music with low lighting. It's a vibe. You should try this. Our average person is this. Like, this is what our vibe is, right? And the person you were telling this to would look at you, if this was an EMS, you'd say, what's a bike? What do you mean? Right? Like, it's such a different setup than starting most businesses.
Sure.
And so what we've done is we've really tried to, create a world where our franchisees have good expectations coming in, that this is not there is no awareness. You're not going to go out and you're not just going to open the doors and people are going to come in the door. This is, at this stage of the company, this is a go out and get it business, right? Now, that being said, we have digital, we have great campaigns, we have educational marketing, through the funnel, all that good stuff. But ultimately, the studios that crush it, the studios that go out and get it every day, they bring the customer in, they let them try the free workout. The workout speaks for itself. You tried it. Our closing ratio is extremely high. Their job is just to get them in the door.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Is it one of those things where does increased competition almost help because you have more people out there kind of promoting the concept? And so at that point, everybody knows what it is. But if you guys can do it at the highest quality, then they'll be more directed to you.
So we have a concept that's popping up near us, and I think their strategy was for a while to pop up right next to us. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And
sure.
They use group and they're a lower cost and all this good stuff. And it's so funny because in the markets that they popped up next to us, we get more people who come in the door and say, well, I tried them and I'm trying you. And then they end up signing up with us because it's just a very different experience. I think, one of the things about franchising that's really important about finding a good franchisor is the difference between a franchisor who's building the business itself and a franchisor who's building a franchise concept, right? And what I mean by that is when you build a franchise concept, you've got owners all over the country. They'll figure it out. They just put $500,000 into it. They're not going to let it fail. When you're building a business, it's no. Why are our systems, operations, tools, why are our people, why is our culture better in every studio from what we can control on top to make sure that your member comes in and says, oh, those people down the street, they suck. I don't want to go over there ever again. You know what I mean? So the only time we actually see competition that can take members from us is usually when you get like a individual trainer who bought a device in Europe and they're an amazing trainer, got a great personality. It's just them. But then they can only take like 10 members and it doesn't matter. They're going to expose enough people that we're going to get more out of it than they're going to get.
Yo, thanks for listening this far. It's at this point in the episode that I want to talk about Streetwise franchising, teaching, training, building. Streetwise franchising. As a franchise consultant, it's my job, it's my absolute pleasure, and it's my mission to help aspiring entrepreneurs find, launch, and build their ideal business. I've been a franchise owner for almost a decade. I know what it means to struggle. I know what it means to build a team. If you're ready to get off of zero, if you're ready to build something for yourself, visit streetwisefranchising.com. Let's get the conversation started. Don't wait until tomorrow to build your future. It starts today. Streetwise franchising. Stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Let's get back to the episode.
Oh, that was good, man. That's where I need to hit the break right there because that was solid. That was a great. I resonate with that so immensely, and I've seen that. Okay, so let's go back. I told you I was going to work backwards. Explain to me the come up a little bit. Like Chris Pena when he was 18 to 22, and then eventually coming across BODY20, and then now leading this organization. There's some pretty significant gaps, I would imagine, in between. Maybe give us the Cliff Notes version and think about it from the concept of, maybe what were some inflection points that really pushed you forward whether you fell on your face and had to get back up to where you are right now?
All right. Good life lessons. So we'll start in the beginning. I come from a pretty poor family. We didn't have a lot of money. Our version of vacation was let's get in the truck, let's get in the car, in the van, in the minivan, take out the front seat, put some blankets down, and we're gonna drive overnight to Texas from Colorado, go visit family and stay on their couch.
There we go.
You know what I mean? That's our version of vacation growing up. And by the way, amazing life growing up. It's nothing wrong with it, right? But I did always want something more. I kind of was, high school is when I started to notice the difference between me and my friends, because I grew up just on the right side of the tracks enough to go to that school where everybody else went. You know what I mean? But also we didn't have what they had. So I always had this really big desire. And I'll never forget, it was starting with the truck. I lived in Colorado. Everybody, drove the big diesels with the stacks coming out of the back. And, that was the cool thing to do back when I was a kid. And so in high school, when I was 15, I wanted to buy a truck. And I went to my parents and I talked to them and I said, hey, I want to buy a truck, and they said, go get a summer job and whatever you save will match. And I think they thought I was going to save $1,000, $500, something like that. Well, we had a family friend who owned a roofing company and it hailed that year. And he said, look, if you go and you knock on doors, every appointment you said, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars. And every one of those appointments turns into a sale, I'll give you another X amount of dollars. And I realized pretty quick, one of the starters on the football team, on the wrestling team, who's in high school, it's a small town. And I show up and I'm talking about buying my first truck. You're probably going to buy my roof, not the other guy's roof, right? I'm part of the high school. And so I showed up to all the meetings. And I made like 70 grand that summer at 15 years old. And so it was a pretty, needless to say, they didn't match the money. And I bought a truck. Funny story, later rolled that truck and lost it, but I did buy my own truck. But the next year I wanted to sell. I said, hey, look, this guy's making 10%. I'm doing the sale for him. Why don't I sell? And Joe, the guy who owned the roofing company, he's like, you got to learn how to roof first. So I spent my weekends roofing, my summer, the beginning of summer roofing, and finally I was able to sell when the next hailstorm hit. Made over 100 grand that year. And the next year when I came back to do it again, I looked at my dad and I said, and this is a very naive statement at the time, but I said, look, I make 10% of the deal when I sell the roof. He pays out 40% between the material and the contractor, and he takes 50%. He doesn't do anything. He just started a company. I'm the one selling it. I'm the one estimating it. I'm the one running the crew. This makes no sense, And my dad said, well, if you think it's that easy, why don't you start a company? I was like, well, can you help me? And he started a company for me. He just put his name on the paperwork and we started my first roofing company at 17 years old. And so life lesson number one, a couple years later, I decided to get rid of that company. The reason I decided to get rid of that company was because I did not like being called a roofer because I knocked on people's doors. Life lesson number one, it does not matter what you do. If it makes money and it works, you should keep doing it.
All right.
Don't be dumb. Don't let your ego get in the way of being successful, right?
Yeah.
There's somebody out there who created waste management who's a billionaire. You know what I mean? Yeah. He picked up trash, right? So, we sold the company. I sold it to my biggest competitor for literally like less than I made in a year because I just wanted to buy a gym. I really loved fitness. I really loved powerlifting. I met a guy who had this opportunity. He was ex 24-hour fitness. He knew what to do, but he had no money. And I had this company. I could get the money. So I got the money. We bought a failing location. It was me and two partners in Greeley, Colorado. We grew that location into another location, full pre-sale, everything. We flipped that location, obviously made it work. Then grew opened the second location. We're about to open a third when 24 hours kind of changed everything. 24-hour fitness basically went from, I don't know if you remember, there was a time where when you went to sign up at a gym, they sold you like a $3,000 package to get started. Like buy 1 year, get 2 free, 6 personal training sessions, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden we went from that to $20 a month, first and last, no deposit, no nothing, no contract, right? That all changed overnight. And when we saw that coming, we left. Funny story. I went from there back to roofing because I was a little bit older now. And I realized it was really dumb of me to leave roofing. It was a lot better business, right, at the time for me than what I was doing at the gym. And so we got back into roofing. I went into a commercial company this time. Now, right before I went into commercial, I realized that when I was doing residential, I could have you sign on the dotted line that you like that color. Right? I could put one 10-foot by 10-foot space up there and have you sign that you like that color again. But then when I installed it, if you didn't like the color, you didn't want to pay me. Right? It was just more difficult to deal with homeowners than it was to deal with commercial properties. Yep. Not to mention a commercial property could be worth 100 homeowners. You know what I mean? And so when I realized that I wanted to go to commercial and I didn't have the skills to go into commercial, right? I didn't have a degree in construction management. I'd never done commercial roofing outside of this one project I gotten. So what I did is I actually read this book by Brendan Bouchard at the time, where he talks about you just need to know 3 things in almost every line of business. right? So like kind of looking back, number two is almost everything, every business, every skill set boils down to like a handful of things that you have to know to be able to accomplish that skill, right? I wanted to own a commercial roofing company. So what did I have to learn? I had to learn how to estimate the projects. I had to learn how the material worked, and I had to learn how to read blueprints because I already knew how to sell. I already knew how to run a crew. I already knew those things. So I just needed those three skills. So I went to a gentleman who owned a company in Loveland, Colorado, and I said, I will work for you for free if you teach me how to do these things. And I bet you I'll be the best salesperson you have. So he taught me. And like 6 months later, I was only working for free for like 90 days. But like 6 months later, I had his head project manager and his superintendent come to me and say, we should start a company. Wow. I was like, wow, that's what I've been wanting to do since I started. So we started a company. Now, I jumped into commercial roofing, and the way commercial roofing works is it does not matter if you get every single roof from this account. They're always going to bid it 3 to 5 times. They're always going to, come back to you with the lowest price and say, if you match this, you can have it, right? So I was working with a big national grocery store chain, and life lesson number 3 is whenever you can create recurring revenue, you should, right? So I went to this chain and I said, hey guys, every time I do a roof for you, it's like $450,000. You build it from the ground up, which means you build the whole building, so the roof is always the same. Somewhere between, call it $440 and $460. It's the average that you pay. I can do this roof for $420, guaranteed. You just have to guarantee me the roofs. And the way that it'll work is I'll go work with my suppliers to buy more material at once. I'll work with my crews to get faster. I'll pay them less, because they do it faster and they're paid on time. And I'll give them a bonus to get it done faster. And after about 6 months, they said yes. And we got a revolving contract. The contract was right around $3.8 million a year, give or take, depending on how many roofs they had. And as long as we didn't mess up, we had this contract, right?
Wow.
Life lesson number 4, get out when it's the best time to get out. It doesn't matter how soon it is. So I got out. My partners took over the company and paid me out. And I spent about a year vacationing with my wife, girlfriend at the time, now wife. Neither one of us came from a wealthy family, so it was nice to feel good for a little bit. And I kept finding myself, because again, remember, I never had like one of those real vacations in my life, When I say real, I mean like extravagant ones. We didn't go to Mexico. When we went to Mexico, we went to visit family in the center of Mexico, not on the coast, right? Sure. And so we went to Cancun. I'll never forget. I saw that turquoisey blue water, and I just I fell in love with it. We went back like 4 or 5 times that year. And then it was the summer. The following year, my birthday's in January. We flew into Miami at night. My girlfriend took me to Miami for my birthday. So we go have fun. And I woke up in the morning and I saw the same color water in the United States. I was like, whoa, this is incredible. I want to live here. And so I started looking at living there. I think life lesson number 5, you have to get really uncomfortable and grow. When we left Colorado, we left stability. We left our backup plan, which is if something didn't work, we could go back to mom. We'd go back to dad. We're still young at the time, right? We're in our early 20s. And we could go do those things because we had support. We had a structure. We go to Florida. We're halfway across the country from anybody we know. What if it doesn't work? What if I get fired from a job? Well, what do we do, right? And so we moved out to Florida. And I'll never forget, we got there. And if anybody's ever been to Fort Lauderdale, we pulled off on Sunrise Boulevard. And I'm paying the most amount of money I've ever even heard of for rent at the time for this apartment complex that's supposed to be beautiful. I pull into Sunrise Boulevard off of 95 and I'm like, what are we doing? It was the most dense, not great looking spot. Let's just put it that way. And as we're driving in, we literally hit this street called Broward and there's a Bentley dealership. And then there's oh, okay, wait, this is crazy how everything's just so close together. Right. And so we move in. I joined a roofing company. I certainly didn't have the type of money to retire in South Florida at 26. Right? Joined a roofing company, continued to grow their business, took them from 21 to a little over $100 million in revenue in about 2.5 years. Pretty quickly realized that none of this was ever going to be for me, right? Yes, I had the option to get some equity in that company, all those different things, but the guy also had 2 kids. And, the second one of them graduated from college, they were in the business. Now they're gonna work here, and and yes, he said they're not gonna mess anything up, and they're gonna be good, and all this different stuff. But it's never how it works, right? They have no experience, and they're coming into the business. And so when we got there and that happened, it started to mess up a lot of the really great things we built. And luckily, at the same time, my wife had started BODY20, and so again, know when it's the right time to leave, right? And if you're doing something for somebody else, there's a really good chance you can do it for yourself. You just have to believe in yourself first. And so we hopped away from that company and started growing BODY20.
How did you guys find BODY20 in the midst of all this?
That is a crazy story. So my wife, She was a teacher. She's teaching fourth grade
Oh,
at a Hollandale Elementary. It's pretty inner city Miami. Title I school. And she wanted to go back into fitness. When she met me, I had the gyms. She really loved fitness. She was competing at the time, NPC bikini, doing really great. And she didn't want to be a teacher anymore. She'd really become disenchanted. She had followed me through a lot. She moved halfway across the country for me. And I kind of looked at her. I was like, look, it's my turn to support you. Okay. So what do you want to do? So she wanted to be in fitness. She tried the Instagram thing. She actually did really well. She was her tag name or whatever was Miss Macro. I was actually making more money doing that and personal training people like through the internet on Instagram than she was as a teacher at one point.
nice.
But she also, my wife is a flower child. She loves to be outside. She's not a stare at your phone all day kind of person. She hated it. So we started actually looking at franchising, believe it or not. I had a friend who'd done really well with Orange Theory. He had grown one location to 11. And he was not the friend who you would expect to be that successful in the business. And so
Nice way to say it.
yeah, exactly. He's a great guy, but just not the guy that's gonna crush it like that. And so when I remember talking to him one time, he was like, I just do what they tell me. I just follow the system. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, they gave me a manual, they gave me video training, and I just do it, and I train my team to do the same thing, and it works. I was like, well, that sounds like we could do that too, And I started looking at franchising. One of the things I do every FTD presentation at BODY20, and the reason why is because I believe that there's more important things than like an item 5, 6, 7, and 19, right? There's the financial terms of the agreement. I believe that the stuff in between actually describes what it's going to feel like to be at that brand. And it also it shows you who the franchisor is, right? And I try to point those things out as we go through the FTD presentation with all the prospects. Now, that being said, the reason why I do that is because when I was looking at franchises, I just scaled this company. We're growing really fast. I'm spending all this time working with my general counsel to make sure we're not signing a bad contract, right? And so I'm really like, at this point in my life, more than any other, reading every line of a contract and understanding what it meant was important to me, right? And I was also doing this day to day, so I was a little more knowledgeable than probably your average franchise prospect. And I was always met with two things, I got to say, whenever I asked the salesperson on the other end. And I talked to a lot of brands. I was always met with either number one, somebody who gave me, and pardon my language here, but a bullshit answer. They had no idea what the actual answer was, and they just tried to kind of make it up as they went. And you could tell, you can always tell when somebody's full of it,
Sure.
And then number two, I got met with somebody who's really frustrated that I had like the nerve to ask a question outside of the financials of the business. I'm like, yeah, but this is a 10-year legal document. Like, this isn't just a pro forma. This is what I'm going to have to do and you're going to have to do for 10 years, right? So I never felt comfortable signing a franchise agreement. I wasn't able to. I had a buddy who owned an Airbnb in Victoria Park, and he had been trying to get me to do some business venture with them, and I kept saying no. And then I took him down a path of doing a business venture. We actually got to the point where we were ready to buy this company and scale it into Florida from Colorado and all this different stuff. And it fell through. There was some shadiness on the other side of the deal. And, he had come up with money, I had come up with money, and he came back to me and he's like, hey, now you owe me because I followed you all the way down that path. You have to meet this guy I've been trying to get you to meet. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then he's like, I got this guy, got this equipment. It's crazy. He used to own gyms. You should come see what it does. And I was like, dude, gyms don't work. Like, I have no interest in owning a gym, and at the time I didn't understand the kind of boutique fitness revolution yet. Like box gyms, even to this day, if you don't have a ton of money, it's going to be hard for you to make one successful. Like, you're going to have to put up $2-3 million. It's just a very different business than boutique fitness. And so I'm like, all right, fine. We go to his Airbnb. We walk around the back to the guest house, and there's this crazy dude who's got a South African accent, and he's like having us try this workout and writing down on paper and all the different stuff. We end up, they didn't have a size for me, right? At the time, I was a power lifter back then. So I was probably 270, pretty decent shape, but just really big. You know what I mean? I was a power lifter at the time. So they didn't have a suit size that fit me. We ended up having him come to our apartment complex and go into our yoga room and train my wife, or my girlfriend now, our girlfriend at the time, wife today. And she was reverse dieting out of a show. So, I mean, when I say she wasn't working anymore, she was probably doing 45 minutes to an hour of cardio in the morning, an hour to an hour and a half of strength training during the middle of the day. And almost every single night, another 45 minutes of cardio at night. She was getting ready for another show. And she's refeeding. Yeah, and she's refeeding. So she is strong. She is full of energy, right? She's not dieting anymore. And she puts on this suit, and in 12 minutes, she's laying on the ground, exhausted, like sweaty, exhausted. And I'm like, that's cool. No big deal. But then this chick who hasn't missed a workout for 2 years straight, I'm talking on vacation, everything, she does not miss, right? Because she's super dedicated. That same girl didn't work out for the next 3 days because she was progressively more sore. And that to me was the selling point. I said, if you want to do this, let's do it. We decided to partner with that gentleman and start an EMS concept in the United States. I kind of always thought it'd be like one or two locations. Kenzie's does really well. She'll have two locations, but like I was pretty set in my career and I was going to do anything with it. And then fast forward a while, things didn't work out with that partner. And franchising is just different in the US versus South Africa. And we took the opportunity to buy him out with another partner who was a member at the time named Kerry Breitbart, who's our chairman today. We bought him out. We decided to kind of essentially say what we have today is not complete. You know what I mean? And we don't think that it was not just not complete, but there's not really any part of it that's worth saving other than the idea. And so we, again, kind of thrashed everything in 2019, shut down franchise sales. We only had seven franchisees sold and 5 open. But we shut down franchise sales. We invested probably a little over $4 million in the course of the next 2.5 years. We rebranded, redid the kind of rebranded with a company called Pearl Fisher. They've done Patron, McDonald's, all these big brands. Are one of the top 10, based out of Soho in New York. We then went to Bright Architecture. Bright Architecture is the premier brand for premier architect for all fitness. They do all the biggest projects. They do, SoulCycle, Rumble, all these brands, right?
Yeah.
They're actually the original creators of, not founders of Rumble, but the original designers of Rumble. That location in Manhattan that was like Justin Bieber owned a piece and all this different stuff, right? One of the most iconic brands, I would say, that corporate version of Rumble, most iconic brands in fitness in general. But we went to them and, luckily, because I was young and didn't know what I didn't know, we had a partner, our chairman, Kerry, who, aside from being very, very wealthy, is also just, he's been around the block a few times. He had 2 9-figure exits in his life, right? So his first company was an oil brokerage out of Houston, Texas. He's the Woodlands. He sold it for 9 figures. And then he went to start an electricity company in Connecticut, the most opposite side of the country, right? He started an electricity company. He became the utility. He sold electricity to houses or homes and businesses and natural gas, grew to 14 states and then sold it and then moved to Florida and became a member and then eventually our chairman. But he came to me and he said, I'll never forget because I saw their quote and I almost said no to them. He came to me and said, if you tell them no, or if you lower their quote, you're going to get, if you tell them $100,000, you're going to get a $100,000 product. If you tell them they don't have a budget, you might get the best product that they've ever made, but it'd be 120. He's like, would you take that? I said, yes. So that's how we operated with that. And luckily we had the funding to do it. So we built a brand that we think is certainly one of the best in the world. They actually, Pearl Fisher won an award. There's the Pearl Awards in Europe. They're a huge design award for branding. They won first place with our brand. We had Bright Architecture build out our space, build out our kind of location. Me and Greg spent our time doing 2 things. This is during COVID. So number 1, supporting our franchisees through COVID to make sure they could get out of COVID successfully and relaunch. And number 2, rebuilding every facet of the business. We went and we said the settings that we have for, EMS are the same settings everybody else in the world uses. Why don't we create our own that are proprietary? And let's test and find out if they work better. We use a piece of technology. You asked earlier about the technology. The second piece of technology we use is called an InBody. It's bioimpedance analysis. InBody is the gold standard for body comp outside of a DEXA. A DEXA is essentially an MRI, so you can't do it more than once a year, right? And we believe that we have to show people what we're doing for them. So they do it weekly. It logs into their app. They can see all their changes, everything that's happening to their body. We redid all of our systems and tools. I think, I've been asked, I feel like there's this common question on podcasts right now that's like, what is your superpower? Why are you good? What are you great at? But they always say superpower. And I always make a joke and I say, me and Greg have 2 superpowers. Funny enough, number 1 is we're not the original founders, right? We're the step founders, which means, last year I was faced with a really difficult decision where we have this amazing design. And in the front, there's, you saw probably 2 different locations. Well, the McKinney North. Do you go to McKinney North or Waters Creek in Dallas?
I went to Waters Creek.
Okay, so that doesn't have the glass in the front, right? Like the see-through?
Well, that one does have glass.
Okay.
That one does have glass.
So that location, that glass plus the hallway is about $100,000 of build cost, right?
Okay.
When you factor everything in, you have to factor in like the drywall, the paint, all that stuff, right? And so last year when our costs rose, we looked at it and we said, we don't need the glass. We don't need the hallway. If we get rid of it, we'll not only save $100,000 in build costs, we'll save almost $300,000 over 10 years in rent, which means that the exact same business, because it can do the same revenue, you make $300,000. And so the part that I say is a superpower about not being like an original founder or something is because if you're the original founder, it's your baby, right? Like that is your baby. You were the person who made the decision to make it pink. Like you do not want to change the pink, right? Because there's some weird memory in your head that like means that, pink is the best or blue or whatever the case is. If you told me tomorrow that if I changed all the wall colors in our studios to hot pink, we'd raise revenue by 2%. We'd change all the wall colors in our studios to hot pink, and I'd probably pay for it. right? Because we only care about what's the best return, right? We spend all of our time on how do we increase revenue or decrease expense at BODY20. And then the second thing I would say is kind of, I always answer it with a two-part kind of two superpower answer. The second one is, we weren't franchisors from the beginning, right? And so like we didn't come with a franchisor background. I said that earlier. Some people build the business, some people build a franchise network, and you need to do both eventually, right? But in the beginning, you need to build the business. And so our systems, our tools, our tech stack at BODY20 is one of the things I'm most proud of. And the reason why is because we looked at it and we said, how are we possibly going to manage 500 plus locations from Florida, like all around the country? How are we going to do this if we can't go show up when there's a problem? And so when you look at our back end and our franchisees back end, it's incredibly sophisticated, but yet simple, right? And so, one of the things I like to talk about is like, in our FDD, our service and tech fee is bigger than most companies. And we get the question, why is it so big? So I always answer it like this. Our tech stack is built for two things. It's to automate your business and to give you and your manager, the two most important people in your business, their time back, right? Now, what do I mean by that? We did a survey where we asked our franchisees, how long does it take you to run payroll, staff, schedule, all that stuff on average? And the response we got was 5 to 6 hours every 2 weeks, okay? Now, that does not sound like a lot of time, right? 5 to 6 hours seems really manageable. Well, it is until you look at it over the 10-year agreement. Because remember, in a franchise, you have 10 years to do everything you possibly can, or 5, or every term is different. But that term you sign for, your license fee, your royalties are all for that amount of time, right? And so at the end of those 10 years, in our case, sure, you can renew if you both agree to renew, but you should operate as if you only have 10 years, 120 months. I tell my franchisees coming in the door, every day that you are not open, you lose some amount of revenue, period. You need to move quickly, right? Now, what I also say is if you take those 5 to 6 hours over 10 years, it's 1,000 to 1,500 hours. It's 1,000 to 1,500 hours you and your manager, the two most important people, could be focused on driving the revenue or increasing the profit or optimizing the bottom line in your business, opposed to checking hours and saying, yes, they worked 40 hours for $7 an hour, right? Does that really add any value to your business? Not really. And so what we did is we took 2 off-the-shelf pieces of software. We built some custom development behind them with both their APIs, to where today at BODY20 it takes 15 minutes to run payroll. And as a matter of fact, after 90 days, if you haven't bounced a payroll check, the provider we have a negotiated agreement where it'll be automated. So you don't even have to look at it. You just get a report every Thursday that says, here's what we're paying. And if you don't have any problems, you just say, okay, I'm good. And you move on with life. If you see something wrong, you send an email as long as it's in before 5, and it'll be corrected before the next day. And so that creates a world where, again, you just got more of your time back and your manager's time back, the two most important people, to focus on what you're doing. So that's kind of how we built our tech stack. But that comes from the fact that we were looking at this of how do we run the business, not how does 500 franchisees who all have a stake in the business run the business, right? So that's what I would say.
You. Yeah, no, that's super interesting, man. I want to respect your time as we get into the fourth quarter of the interview. I kind of want to understand, like, what outside of the tech, what does the team look like now? You kind of talked like high level partners. What does the team from the franchisor side look like that these franchisees are leaning on when they come into the system?
Absolutely. Well, we just finally kind of completed what I like to call, and Jay likes to call this entrepreneurial inversion, right? Where you go from like founder-led to real structured organization, department-led.
Yeah.
And so Jay Galuzzo is our new CEO. He came on in November. So not new anymore, but new to most of the people on the call. Jay, incredibly impressive guy. I think when he expressed any interest in BODY20, both Greg and I were both like, okay, well, if this guy's willing to come on, he can have either one of our jobs.
Nice.
But he to give you some background, he was the youngest. He graduated Columbia Law. He was the youngest general counsel for a public company at the time ever.
Okay.
He then he was going through kind of the worst of economic times and the market crash and all that stuff at the time. And so he just had a rough life. He didn't, enjoy what he was doing. He was using SoulCycle as an outlet. So he was spinning for an outlet. And one day he was sitting in class and he said, this is me paraphrasing what he's told me. He said, I wish I could track my results and compete against others. So he started working on a prototype and he founded a company called Flywheel. Flywheel was a private brand, grew really quickly. I want to say they got up to 40 something locations open, maybe a bunch of, up to close to 60 leases signed or something like that. I'm sorry if I get the information wrong there. And then he sold it to a private family office, got an offer he couldn't refuse, and moved on. He has since been the CEO of the largest F45 franchisee, the CEO, our board member on the largest Crunch franchisees and the board of Bears Boot Camp. He went on to be a general partner in one of the most notable mid-market private equity firms in the health and wellness space. They've done investments like Theragun and escape rooms and all this different stuff. It's called North Castle Partners. And so just when you talk about somebody who, if you could sit down and imagine the perfect CEO for our business, it's like he just kind of showed up one day at Greg's doorstep. And so we said, we're going to bring him on. And then me and Jay, since call it January, have spent the past time understanding what does this company need to look like, because we're growing too fast. Your average brand, they look the same way until 20 units, then they hire a couple of people, they go to 50 units, they go to 100 units, then they hire more people, then they go to 150, hire more people. We're opening like 50 units a year, if not more. Like that's a bad year. That's going to be a bad year for us is 50 units, And so if that's the case, we don't have time to wait to hire and then retrain and all this different stuff. So we looked at the business and said, what are we going to need at 500 units, right? And then we backed off and said, what can we afford today? And really, it was all of it. And so we said, let's go for it. So we spent the last 5-6 months bringing in, people like Erin Clift, who, she was ex-Google, ex-Spotify CMO, Waze CMO, CrossFit CMO, has been fractional, helping out a bunch of different franchise brands over the last couple of years and wasn't planning on going back full time. And I think Jay's been able to convince her, you know what I mean? We brought in a operations wizard, Ian Creighton, ex Honeycomb, ex Men's Health. He's a writer for Men's Health. He was on Wall Street, just like operational wizard, right? Just when the dude sits down, he can operationalize anything. Chris Pena as a CFO, he is, and I want to dig into him in a second, just on why we hired him. But Chris Pena is, triple domer, 2-time valedictorian from, I believe it's Stanford. He won this crazy award where it's like top 10 CPA scores in history, right, in the CPA exam. And he's been able to do things for our franchisees to manage the bottom line through automation and technology. That's incredible. I mean, every single month they get a 4-month backward, 8-month forward look at their business. And it says, the last 4 months look like this. Your goal, in 8 months from now is this. And because you missed your goal last month, we're going to spread it over the next 3 or whatever the case is. But giving real insight into the business, he built like a labor forecaster model with an outside consultant, which essentially our franchisees' biggest expense is labor. Today, they just get every Wednesday pops into their inbox. It says, based on your last 4 months of user history from your members and your coach's availability, this is your perfect schedule for next week. We're going to save over $3,000 on average per location, right? So just really helping them out that way. Ryan McAvoy, who's our senior vice president of development, he is, X 24 hour, X anytime, X Mayweather, X, he's been a franchisee himself. We do look for people who are not just on the franchisor side their whole career, but people who spend time on the franchisee side during their career.
Sure.
And the reason that's important to me is because if you've never had the pain of having to write a check into your business, but yet you want to go tell that franchisee that they have to write a $200,000 check for new equipment, like, good luck. Man, you're a franchisee. It's like you need to make sure that person can sit down with you and explain why. This is what it's going to do for you. This is a couple other people who've already done it and it's worked for them. And here's why. You got to know that I know what it feels like too, or else you start looking at it as the man in the ivory tower, right? And that dude's a jerk and they're, making me do stuff. No, we want to be on the type of relationship where we're doing this together because it's good for you, right? But I mean, Gabby Levine's in charge of real estate. She was with Exponential Fitness from like 600 units to 2,200. She signed a bunch of their leases. She was their VP of real estate for a long time. Bob McQuillan, who's from Handstone Massage, helped their development team grow from, I think, 20 to over 600 units. Been here with us for a long time now, since 2021. We've tried to really bring in some home run hitters. We also, at any point in time where it's something unique, like our sales process you mentioned earlier, there's no awareness, right? So the sale at BODY20 is very unique. My national sales director was a personal trainer in a franchisee studio, then a sales associate, then a manager, then a multi-studio manager, then had to start all over as an admin for us. And now she's national sales director, right? Like we try to build people up also in those very specific roles. Our director of education, not director of education, I apologize, director of fitness. She runs the programming and the modality. She was a coach first, then a manager, lead coach, then a manager, then our corporate studio manager. Then she got to take that role on because she knows the workout better than anybody we could hire, right? So we try to make sure we bring in healthy franchise experience, but also bring in healthy fitness experience and also bring in healthy BODY20 experience to all those roles.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's really cool. It's cool to hear that how you guys are building it, because I'm sure the franchisees, they need that level of intentionality. This is my last question. How do
Sure.
you define this chapter of your personal development? Like this chapter in your
Ooh.
life, how would you define that chapter having, built the team, working on replacing yourself, adding folks, building this business? I'll leave you with it.
Oh man, that's a good question. I would say it's the most confusing chapter I've ever had in my life.
Sure.
You're leaving this thing that you've just spent all your time and energy on since 2017, right? Like everything has been about this since 2017, and it's not for a bad reason, right? Like usually when you leave what you're doing in career wise, it's because you got fired or because you quit, somebody made you upset, or you're going on to a better option. When you're handing over the business that you built, it's the weirdest feeling in the world. I don't know how, my partner Greg, they had sold a company before. He was partners with his dad that in the electricity company. He stayed on. He was the only partner to stayed on for like 3 years. And he said it's like watching somebody buy your company and having to stay is like having open heart surgery while you're awake. You can see them just pulling all these things out, and you don't know, you have to trust that they know what they're doing, right? That's why you brought them in. But you're also like, wait, we did this for this reason, and it's really important, but you can't do that either, because then you disempower the people you brought in. So it's this very unique phase where, I try to take it as a student, right? I try to take it and say, look, Jay has been so much more successful than I've ever been. He's been, than most people can ever dream of. He knows what he's doing. It may not feel right today, but it's gonna feel right in 6 months. I know it is, or in 3 months, or in a week when I see, I can't tell you how many times I've been like, oh, it's a bad idea, but I'm not going to say anything. And then like a week later, I'm like, wow, that was a really good idea. So I would say it's humbling, and it's a time where, I'm trying to take it in as a student, and it's very mixed, you know what I mean? But I do get to spend a lot more time with my kids, which is amazing. I'm trying to plan some vacations.
There we go.
But no, it's as my wife would say, that's a high class problem to have.
Come on, man. Come on. And that's super beautiful. You see how we went full circle there, right back to the kids with the family. Well, Mr. Chris, this has been a huge pleasure talking to you. I hear the passion, I see it, but not only that, I mean, you're pretty humble, but golly, you guys are doing things at a high level. So I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. To the listener, if you guys are interested in BODY20, learning more about what it is, the business opportunity, hit me up. I'd like to introduce you to the team. But until next time, stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Peace.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Hey, if this episode added any value to your life at all, please like it, share it, give me a 5-star review. It's the only way that this show is going to gain traction and help more people achieve their dreams. If you're ready to start your franchise journey, visit streetwisefranchising.com. Let's set up a time to talk. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Until next time, stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Peace.